there is, and we've talked about it before, there is an insane amount of stress that a DM can sometimes put on themselves to always be 100% sure 100% of the time, even if they're not. That there's this facade that a DM must put on that says, I've got this, I know everything, and it's fine, and I'm good, and of course I planned it that way. And those types of tables are changing, and yet there are still so many tables that are like that. And I wanted to compliment you two and our other players that played last night in being the right group to reinforce a level of comfort in being able to be open in that way, and how wonderful and resounding that experience was, and satisfying that experience was. I could relax and just, here's the story, and here's the next story beat. John cracks a joke, we laugh about it for a little bit, I can laugh at it, here's the next story beat. And even while we're talking about that stuff, I can put the story beat in the chat, and the chat is the running track of the narrative. And if I feel like we missed it, I'll just read it and make sure we got it, and we'll keep on going. And it made it so there's a wonderful give and take that allows for pausing, and it allows for jokes, and it allows for the fun of the table without having to push anything. And being with this group for some time, I was able to plan our 3-act structure based upon what I know all of you are going to explore. And that's from experience.
Yeah, so just to, because I don't know what people's first episode of this podcast is. So just to kind of reiterate what the play style we've elected for this campaign and other campaigns I've been a part of. And this isn't every campaign virtually. I know a lot of groups just use a Zoom call, like we're recording this podcast with, and just talk to each other that way. And what we found works, and I've had a lot of people now say, I thought I would like at the table better, but I end up liking this better, is through Roll20, there's a chat functionality. And basically when you make an in-game decision, or you are like putting it on the record that your character is saying something, you type it into the chat, just what your character says, what they do, what questions you have, like that you can whisper to the DM. The rolls that you make, I use the RNG to the auto roller dice, just so that I'm being very clear that I'm not rolling something and then fudging. There is no question, so that my DM is completely trustworthy on all the calculations I'm making. What that ends up doing is it has a few effects. First, it immediately clarifies what you are saying in character and what you are saying out of character, which is confusion that plagued every other D&D experience I was at, which is I would make a joke and then the DM would start to react, and then it's like, no, I was obviously joking. I was talking about Gundam models. Like that doesn't exist in this world. It wouldn't make sense. And what it does is it allows for a level of seriousness when it's appropriate, but also a level of humor when it's appropriate. And if you want to be humorous in game, at least you're being like, you're making it very clear that you're being humorous in game, which then adds to a greater like character depth. It makes very 3-dimensional characters. One of the other things that the chat does is it allows you to batch process. So one of the things about always having to pay attention to what absolutely everybody else is saying at the table is I want you to imagine it's like a computer with 8 or 9 tabs open, each of those tabs being a facet of the game. One tab for each of the other players, one tab for your notes, one tab for your character sheet. Imagine how slow your browser goes versus just having one tab open that you can type things in, and then letting you relax a little, get up to go to the bathroom, get up to get a glass of water without having to miss anything and come back, because now you have a record of it. And then that record also allows you to go back after the game, so that way if you need a quick refresher, it's not just kind of up to our memory. Now that it's you, either it happened or it didn't happen, and you can see, and then the other thing that it allows you to do is it just, reading and listening are just 2 different parts of your mind that are at work. Like just the way that you interpret it, the way that you process it Ian can either back me up or disagree on the science of it, but from what I've understand and what I've experienced, being able to read through what someone says just clears up any misunderstanding. It's not like you're going to misinterpret something because of a tonal thing, because it's either written or it's not. and I just find that it's easier to stay engaged with all of the different parts of the game. And like you said, Adam, it allows you to take your time without feeling you're interrupting anything. So a lot of the whisper conversations were like, to me, it's always a more fulfilling experience when the DM can say your character knows this, and then I can deliver that line in character, rather than the DM saying, this is what your character knows, and then me just being like, yeah, what he said, So like if Adam whispers to me, this is how dragons in this world act, and then as a character, I can decide how I want to craft and deliver that information, and then he's there to fill in any gaps if I miss anything important. But really it's a good teamwork kind of exercise of being able to, and that's what makes it immersive. Nobody else saw what Adam said to me, but also they still got the information, and I was able to RP my character more effectively than I think we would be able to if we were trying to have a conversation back and forth. So in my mind, it eliminated a lot of the things where our energy can go unnecessarily by trying to talk to each other, and focus our energy on the stuff that matters, which is the gameplay, the storytelling, and the immersion.
So our mission statement is become your best self through gaming. And this pursuit, especially running the game last night, it is a weird thing for me to also express to my players, hey, I'm a little nervous about this. And normally I wouldn't do that. I would put that energy elsewhere, or try to put that energy elsewhere and fail miserably. And to be able to kind of self-talk through that. And then once we got going, to recognize that in using that process, in making a clear distinction between the gameplay and us playing, like people just enjoying each other's company and cracking jokes and having commentary and even asking questions verbally, that's perfectly okay. And then having a whisper, and me being able to manage a whisper while also cracking a joke, or connecting in that way. Those are very different separators. And when DMs get into this, I know I can't be the only person that feels a strange sense of time suck when I'm running a chat. And now, like, I think it cemented last night for me, finally, of like what the function of the chat really works and how it works in my flow. And by doing that, it allowed a point of relaxation where normally I would feel, if I was whispering to someone, that I was somehow neglecting another player. That if I was giving a description of a space, that I was neglecting the whole group because I wasn't speaking to them. Like anything that I was preparing, if I was moving and shuffling a map around while you guys discussed something, that because you were discussing a subject that wasn't the game, I was somehow failing you. That if I didn't have you on point at all times, I was a bad DM. Like that was always that running narrative for me of like, is everyone okay? Are you all right? I got to make sure, And
well, yeah, and just to kind of cut in for a second, keeping us on point is exhausting. So it's actually better that there's like almost a mental break that you're shuffling around the maps, because trying to keep us engaged at all times for 6 hours straight just makes me want to throw up a little.
And that's the final point, is that there are groups that I keep to 3 hours, and we do a 3-hour session with a break after about 90 minutes or so, which is a very good time to have a break. We might, but it'll be like they really are energized by that dynamic improvisational interactions. They want to do the physical interactions and the voices and all that. And that, though that is energizing to me as well, it is exhausting. It is a stamina drain. Now, as someone who grew up in the theater and loves that aspect of it, I won't deny them that. And I do enjoy it, but it was so interesting to also enjoy this. It's a different switch for me. And yet I ended energized and it just super happy for the next one with so many ideas of where this could go and where this is all going to go. That's how I want to end sessions. And as I get more comfortable with it, I'm trying to put more and more things into the chat narrative because as expansive as these worlds are, I want to make sure I have a running log of this is what happened. And there's a freedom for a player to say, this is what I say.
Thank you so much for listening to some of our podcast highlights. This podcast is part of the Darkmoor Podcast Network. If you want to support the content creators, feel free to visit our Patreon. And please, game responsibly.